So let's read the translations and then we'll move to this is 8:12, 22 to 24 we'll be discussing. Tam vikshadeva iti kantileshad वृदास्फुटस्मित विसृष्ट कटाक्ष मुष्टः त्रिप्रेक्षण प्रति समीक्षण विवलात्मा नात् मानम antique umam swaganamscha veda. While Lord Shiva observed the beautiful woman playing with the ball, she sometimes glanced at him and smiled slightly in bashfulness. Sorry, this is 42. I'm sorry. So, Atmam Shabhutam Tamayam Bhavanim Bhagavan Bhavaha Sammatam Rishimukhyanam Prityachashta Bharata. O descendant of Bharat Maharaj, Lord Shiva in jubilation then addressed his wife Bhavani, who is accepted by all authorities as the potency of Lord Vishnu. Aivapyapashyastvamajasya mayam parasya pumsah paradevatayah aham kalanam rishabhopi muhye yayavisho anye kim uta savantraha. Lord Shiva said, O goddess, you have now seen the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sorry? Who is the unborn master of everyone. Although I am one of the principal expansions of his lordship, even I was illusioned by his energy. What then is said to be said of others who are fully dependent on Maya? Yam mam apruchastvamupetya yogat samasahasranta uparatam vai sa esha sakshat purusha purano nayatra kalo vishate navedaha. When I finished performing mystic yoga for 1000 years, you asked me upon whom I was meditating. Now here is that supreme person to whom time has no entrance and who the Vedas cannot understand. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Eternal time enters anywhere and everywhere, but it cannot enter the kingdom of God. Nor can the Vedas understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is an indication of the Lord's being omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. Okay. So, Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Hare Krishna. So today we are discussing how Lord Shiva is offering prayers to Lord Vishnu after he has been deluded by the Mohini Murti manifestation of Lord Vishnu. And I will focus on this theme of Lord Shiva's extraordinary humility. We'll talk about two conceptions of humility. One is it's the fruit of mercy, and another is humility is the way to mercy. What has happened is Lord Shiva has had a humiliating, we could say, a humiliating failure in his life. He who is the spiritual teacher of many great he ran around like infatuated after a damsel, and then he lost his seed, and the whole world could see that. Normally, if somebody goes through a situation where they are embarrassed by their inability to control themselves, especially if it happens in public, it will be unbearably humiliating. But no, instead of humiliation, Lord Shiva is choosing humility. So how does he do that? And how is he able to keep such an unwavering focus on the Lord in such a situation? That's what we'll discuss today. So I'll talk in three broad parts. First, how bhakti complicates our conceptions of success and failure. Complicates in the sense that what we normally consider as success and failure may not be the way it is in bhakti. Then we will talk about how humility has two roles in bhakti, the twin roles of humility in bhakti. And then, while bhakti complicates the conceptions of success and failure, actually bhakti simplifies our focus and purpose, what we are meant to do. So let's look at this. Now, if we consider normal definitions of success or failure, say if we have a particular goal, if we succeed in achieving that, if we achieve that goal, we consider it success. If we fail to achieve it, we consider that as a failure. So if it's same applies with respect to certain standards of self-control or discipline. If suppose somebody wants to fast on a particular holy day and they are unable to fast, that is a failure. Or even what to speak, nowadays fasting is in vogue as a means for losing weight. So even in that area also, if people fast, they consider that they were able to stick to a particular diet for a particular amount of time, they consider that as success. If they don't succeed, that's failure. So this is the normal definition of success. But however, in bhakti, there's something else that is going on. And what is that? Bhakti is not just about what we do externally. When whatever we do externally, that will comprise some achievement, and that may give us some applause in the world. Oh, you followed the standard, you were able to do this service, you were able to achieve this, and then people praise. So there is something which we do externally, and that has its place. But bhakti is not just about that. It is also about internally. Means while we are rendering some service to Krishna, there is an external result of that service which is internally. And what is that inner reshaping? That is, we become attracted to Krishna and we become absorbed in Krishna. And that's what is critical. If we consider the well-known verse from the Shrimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, where it says that even an activity if it doesn't increase our attraction to Krishna, then it's a waste of time. So for us, we may do various services, whether it is we say we worship the deities or hear and speak about the Bhagavatam, or even follow some rigid standards of self-control. All that is meant to increase our attraction to Krishna. And yes, in bhakti also we get some honor, we get some respect because say we are senior devotees, or because we have done some valuable services. That's important, but that's not what is critically important. Bhakti has this dual dimensions, and the inner dimension is more important than the outer dimension. Now if we consider this dynamic, there is the external result and there's the internal result. So if a person is doing something that doesn't produce any external result or any internal result also, both are low, then that person's living is almost like pointless. What am I living for? So if I'm doing something, if I'm studying the Bhagavatam, but I can't speak anything based on the Bhagavatam, nor do I myself understand the Bhagavatam or feel attracted to the Bhagavatam, feel interested in reading about it, then we may start thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing all this? On the other hand, it could be that, say, we are externally successful. Externally successful means that suppose there is a the Nirjala Ekadashi, we have once a year, and other times also we may fast. So we fast with very high standards of austerity, but we are simply craving. How many people know that I fasted like this, and how many people appreciate me for this? There is no inner attraction toward Krishna. Externally, we need more and more validation for what we are doing. Hmm. Now, if there is internal result, but there is no external result, then one will be contented. We may not be doing much in the world's eyes, but we will be contented. So Srila Prabhupada, in many ways, was at this level during his almost 30 years of outreach in India. Yes, internally, he was always attracted to Krishna and he wanted to do more and more for Krishna. So that's why he was putting more and more of his time and energy in serving Krishna, although not much result was manifested. However, this fourth level is where there is external result and there is an internal result also. So, for example, we decide to practice some serious level of sense control. Now, say Purushottam month is there, next month Kartik will be there. So we decide, okay, I'm going to decrease my this activity. Maybe I will avoid certain kinds of food, or I will do this, I won't do that, whatever it is. We plan that, and then along with that, we also increase our devotional activities, and thereby we become connected with Krishna. And then when we are enlivened, we are enriched internally by interacting with us, people also feel inspired, they also feel enriched. So the external result is not unimportant. The external result is important because we are in a missionary movement where we want to contribute to changing the world also. So if whether it is based on scripture that can inspire others, if we can, if we like to study Bhagavatam, we like to study Shrimad Bhagavatam, and we ourselves like the knowledge. So we would like external results also. But if we consider these four quadrants, external success, internal success, but bhakti, now we would want all both of them together. However, there is something going on in bhakti that sometimes success failure might get inverted. Why? If there is external success which leads to inner pride, then that will be a spiritual failure. If somebody can very easily do a service, somebody sings or speaks very well, and there are hundreds and thousands of people who applaud, and that person becomes inflated by that, I'm so great, then what happens? Then actually they will no longer feel a need for Krishna, and that pride may actually remove Krishna from their heart. Pride may take them on a ride away from Krishna. So when that happens, although they were successful, suppose somebody fasts with a very high standard, somebody manages self-control, but if that makes them proud and looking down, they start looking down at others, then that is a failure. So what is considered success in a normal sense might be a failure. Conversely, if there is outer failure but it leads to inner humility, so I tried to do this service, I tried to control my I tried to exercise certain level of self control, but I just could not, and that makes me feel the need for Krishna. That Krishna, I need you, without you I am nothing, and that leads to inner humility. Then that is a spiritual success. Now, outer failure may not lead to inner humility. Outer failure can also lead to humiliation. So what is the difference between humility and humiliation? So humility is false ego rejected. Humiliation is false ego frustrated. So false ego rejected and false ego frustrated. False ego frustrated means I want to, I want to believe that I am a big person. I want the world to know that I'm a big person. And when I find that I cannot, I cannot do something big in the world, then I want the false ego, but there is nothing on which to base the false ego. So there's false ego frustrated. But so humiliation is false ego frustrated, whereas humility is false ego rejected. Rejected means, yeah, I don't need to show myself as a big person in the world. If I'm connected with Krishna, I'm happy by that. That is what really matters for me. So this is how, in the case of Lord Shiva, although there's an outer failure in terms of sense control, he is spiritually successful because he turns toward humility internally, humbly turns toward Krishna, humbly towards the Lord, and he praises the Lord. Now, exactly what is his consciousness while praising the Lord? We'll come to that a little later. But this is the first point. I discussed how the bhakti complicates our conceptions of success and failure. So sometimes we may be successful in the world's eyes, but we may fail in actually Krishna's eyes. If we become proud of that success, and sometimes we may fail in the world's eyes, but we may be successful if we that takes us closer to Krishna. Now, how does, as I talked about humility and humiliation, how does humility play a role in this? That's the second part we'll discuss now. Now, humility is the fruit of bhakti. If somebody has devotion, they naturally become humble. How is that? Because when we have bhakti, bhakti means our consciousness is naturally focused on Krishna. And then we understand how great Krishna is. And as compared to Krishna's greatness, we understand I am so small. What do I have to be proud of? Generally, pride is not, uh, it's not a, it's never experienced in isolation. Pride is usually, or if you want to say arrogance, uh, because the word pride sometimes have a positive connotation also. But if you want to use the word arrogance, which usually has a negative connotation, so arrogance is usually experienced never in isolation but in comparison. Say I am so much better than this person, I am so much better than that person, I am so much better than that person, and that is how we feel superior to others. But if our frame of reference is not the people around us, if our focus is on Krishna, then how great Krishna is as compared to that, how small I am. So naturally, that brings humility. So when the great saints like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami or Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when they are expressing profound feelings of humility, Amara Jeevan Sada Paperat Nahiko Punyera Lesha. My life is filled with sin. There is not even a trace of humility, trace of piety or virtue within me. Uh, it's not artificial. Now, is it actual? So, if we consider the frame of reference as compared to other human beings, actually they are very virtuous. They're not at all sinful. But when their frame of reference is comparing with Krishna, how pure Krishna is, and exalted devotees are absorbed in Krishna, they feel that Krishna is offering me so much love. And what am I doing in return? How little am I reciprocating with Krishna? Therefore, this doesn't matter. So I have nothing to be proud of. So when there is bhakti, humility natural results because bhakti fixes our mind on Krishna. And as compared to Krishna's greatness, we naturally realize our smallness. So this sense of humility doesn't lead to any sense of inferiority or inadequacy because we are absorbed in Krishna and we feel delighted, enriched, empowered by that absorption in Krishna, by the realization that we are parts of someone so wonderful. We feel enlivened by that. So in the case of Lord Shiva, because he's absorbed in the Lord Vishnu, so his focus is not on how the world is going to see me, or the world was looking up at me, but the world is now going to look down at me. He is only looking up at the Lord and is thinking how wonderful the Lord is. So his situation where he lost sense control for some time, that just increases his awareness of the Lord's greatness, and thus he feels enriched. He feels so his bhakti leads him to humility rather than to humiliation. The humility is not just the fruit of bhakti. This I talked about two conceptions of humility. So to have such humility itself is mercy of Krishna. That means when somebody is able to be in a very devotional consciousness after doing something remarkable or after going through something very unbearable, either way, if somebody maintains a focus on Krishna, then that humility which indicate that they're focused on Krishna, that humility itself is the mercy of Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Sanatan Goswami goes through immense difficulties to escape from the prison in which Nawab Hussain Shah has kept him. And then finally he encounters life threats. And after a great trouble, he comes to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in North India, in Varanasi. So at that time, Lord Chaitanya hears his story and then he says something very extraordinary. He doesn't say that, oh, Sanatana Goswami, you are so renounced, you are so heroic, you are so devoted to Krishna. He says something else. He says the movements of the super soul are extremely mysterious. The super soul has been very merciful to you, because of which, although you were with such opulence, you could detach yourself from it, you could disentangle yourself from it, and you could come and surrender to Krishna. So he's seeing that humility by which he could accept a beggar's dress, a mendicant's dress, while he was living in opulence. That humility is the fruit of bhakti. That humility is itself the evidence that somebody has already got the mercy. Now, what if we don't have it? Then the second aspect of humility is also the route to bhakti. That means I don't have that attraction toward Krishna right now, but humility can help me to develop that attraction to Krishna. So in this case, so in the when bhakti is already there, the focus is on Krishna, and by focusing on Krishna, automatically we realize our smallness. That is humility as the fruit of bhakti, as a fruit of focus on Krishna. But humility as the route to bhakti means we focus on and we acknowledge how small we are, how little we can do, and then we feel the need for Krishna's help. And that's how humility manifests. So, and when we call out to Krishna in this way, that humility to call out to Krishna enhances our bhakti. So, for example, we may try to control our senses, but we struggle and fail. And that makes us, Krishna, without you, I'm hopeless. Please help me. We try to do some service. Maybe we are doing some management, we are doing some book distribution, we are trying to do some outreach, but somehow nothing seems to be clicking. People don't seem to be interested, or there are so many quarrels going on, nothing seems to be effective. Then we realize, no, I think I'm so great, I can do so many things. There's so little I can do, Krishna. Please, I need your help. So then that means our consciousness is on us and our inadequacies, but that directs us, our consciousness, toward Krishna. So then that focus on Krishna is the essence of bhakti. So humility can be mercy, and when we are naturally able to focus on Krishna, but humility can also be the way to mercy. When we call out to Krishna desperately, then that calling out to Krishna opens our heart for Krishna to give his mercy to us. So in this way, humility works both ways. So Lord Shiva, he has bhakti, therefore he exhibits humility. In our case, we may not have so much bhakti, but we may also struggle with temptation. We may also succumb to temptation. But at that time, we can choose humility, and even through our failures in overcoming temptation, we may go closer to Krishna. So this is the second part about how humility plays two roles in bhakti. Now, and then the last part I'll talk about is how bhakti simplifies our focus and purpose. So what does it mean? See, what was Lord Shiva thinking? He's actually not devastated, he's not shattered, he's not humiliated. He is jubilant, he's praising the Lord. So what is his focus on? It is not on his inability to resist temptation. His focus is on the Lord's ability to create such temptation that even he couldn't resist it. So now, what does this mean? This is a very subtle point over here. That suppose we start watching a movie. Now, some movies are so boring that we just turn off the movie and go somewhere else. Or even when they're sitting in the theater, we start thinking, why did I come here? So that's why we feel, well, I'm just wasting my time. This is stupid over here. On the other hand, if some movies are very well made, then it might be a 1.5 to 3 hours movie. We sit down and we don't even notice how 3 hours went away. So now, at one level, we could say the movie is an illusion. Well, that's true. When I was in America, I was invited one place to speak in a university. The name of that university was the American Institute of Illusion. So the name itself was Institute of Illusion. Now, what does it mean? Actually, it was about entertainment industry. So it's actually to create good illusion requires hard work, requires intelligence, requires talent. So when some movie is very well made so that it completely captivates us, consumes our attention, that means the director is a really good person and director is a talented person. So similarly for us, when when, at least for Lord Shiva, when some temptation has consumed him, he's not just thinking, oh, I couldn't control myself. He's thinking, how brilliant is Krishna that he can make a temptation that can consume even me. Although I am known as Dhira, I am known as a self-controlled person, but still even he gets controlled. Even he gets overpowered by the temptation. So what this means is, we often think of that Krishna consciousness means to think of Krishna, and the temptations of the world, they distract us from Krishna. That is like a binary or digital idea. This is Krishna consciousness, this is lack of Krishna consciousness. That's true at one level. At another level, if we understand that it is there are the things which make us unconscious of Krishna, it is Krishna's potency that is making us unconscious of Krishna. That means that Prabhupada gave the example in On the Way to Krishna book that if a alcoholic can't give up drinking alcohol, if that alcoholic thinks that the taste of this alcohol is actually Krishna, Prabhupada expanded the ambit of Rasoham Apsu Kaunteya over there, that I am the taste of water, so I am the taste of wine also. Prabhupada says, by thinking like this, the alcoholic will one day become a devotee of Krishna. Now, of course, Prabhupada is not saying by drinking alcohol one will become a devotee of Krishna. But the point is that even the things that make us unconscious of Krishna, we can become conscious of Krishna even in those things. Okay, what is it so special about this alcohol that is captivating me so much? Actually, it is Krishna manifesting over here. It is a spark of Krishna's splendor. Krishna describes in the 10th chapter of the Gita that everything attractive manifests a spark of his splendor. Yam yajad vibhuti matsatvam Shrimad Urjitameva tattadevavagachatvam mama tejo amsha sambhava. So now this doesn't mean that now again it's not that Lord Shiva again said, please show me Mohini Murti and I'll see Mohini Murti. This time I won't get tempted. No, he didn't challenge the Lord. It is not that he deliberately tries to again become conscious of that. So there are certain things which can drag our consciousness away from Krishna. It's not that we have to deliberately go and become conscious of those things to see whether we'll get distracted or not. But just knowing that these things have the potential to drag my consciousness away from Krishna indicate that they are also manifesting a spark of Krishna's potency. So by shifting the focus from, oh, why was I so foolish to get deluded like this, to how brilliant Krishna is, that even I, with all my knowledge and my realizations and everything else, even still I got deluded. So how brilliant Krishna is. In that way, we can become conscious of Krishna even through the things that make us unconscious of Krishna. And that is Lord Shiva's focus. So now, when we talk about selflessness, so in the sense of here, what is the context of selflessness? That somebody was getting praise and honor and respect and they lose that. So, but when we get something, when we are selfless, does that mean it is less for the self? Well, not exactly. Why is that? Because whenever we are trying to do some service to Krishna, sometimes we may do a service and we may get we may not get praised, we may not be recognized, we may not be appreciated. We may be thinking, what am I getting from this service? So we may say, just do service selflessly. But we feel, no, others are being praised, why others are being recognized, why am I not being recognized? It's not that simple. Why? Because the more we give our consciousness to Krishna's service, the more we give Krishna a place in our consciousness. So while doing a service to Krishna, whatever service it may be, whether it is, so sometimes we hear a class and we feel, I've heard so many classes, I hear them and then I forget them. So what is the use of hearing? Well, okay, we can try to remember as much as possible. But even if we forget, at least during that time when we were hearing the class, we are remembering Krishna. During that time, for that time, we gave Krishna a place in our consciousness. And if you're not hearing a class, if you're giving a class, then how much more involved we get, how much more absorbed we get, how much more engaged we get. And slowly but surely, by this process, when we try to focus on simply giving our consciousness to that service, not letting our consciousness get lost in, okay, what are the results of the service? Just trying to give ourselves, then we are giving Krishna a place. And as Krishna takes a place in our heart, in our consciousness, then gradually our attraction to him starts increasing. So, so at one level, when we are doing a service to Krishna, you know, if we focus too much, there is a reciprocation between us and Krishna. When Prabhupada was commenting on the Bhagavatam, he had no idea whether anybody would ever read it or not. But he was focusing on, I am doing this for Krishna's pleasure, I am doing this for my spiritual master's pleasure. And that was the reciprocation that was going on. And if we get too caught with the external results, I'm being respected, I'm not being respected, then that will distract us from that reciprocation. The more we obsess over the outer results of our service, the less place we leave for Krishna in our consciousness. Because what happens? Our consciousness is caught in, okay, how many people are praising me? How many people are recognizing what I'm doing? Now, this doesn't mean that we human beings have a natural need for reciprocation even in this world. So we can seek that reciprocation, but a devotee doesn't base one's devotion on that alone. That certainly a devotee, even if we don't get praise and applause, if we are focused on Krishna, we can be reciprocating with Krishna and we'll be growing through that. So I'll leave some time for question answers, but the conclusion is that when we are practicing bhakti, we care for the result in terms of the external result, but we care much more for our consciousness, because the consciousness that we are offering to Krishna, that is the biggest result. So whenever, say, when we are doing, if whatever service we are doing, so if our consciousness is becoming humble, it is becoming gentle, it is becoming sweet, it is becoming permeated with attraction toward Krishna, then that is the result that is the most important. And we see that in Srila Prabhupada also. At a time when book distribution fever was at its all-time high in ISKCON history, the devotees asked Prabhupada, what service pleases you the most? And Prabhupada said, if you love Krishna. So Prabhupada was definitely pleased when devotees distributed books. But distributing books was a means to engage the mind in Krishna and to thereby increase our attraction to Krishna. So if we care only for the result, and if the result doesn't come or the opposite of what we desired comes, we might feel too humiliated and become discouraged and may even quit bhakti because we feel this is so I'm not getting anything out of it. But if you understand that I'm trying to serve Krishna, and whatever service I'm doing, it's an opportunity for me to fix my mind on Krishna, to focus my consciousness on Krishna, then we will know that just by the act of doing that service, we are getting some result. We are connecting with Krishna during the service, and through that service and the purification coming from that, our heart is also becoming more and more attracted toward Krishna. So Lord Shiva, through this story, demonstrates at one level a mortifying failure in sense control. But at the same time, the story also demonstrates an astonishing success in devotion. So there is a failure in sense control or failure in renunciation, but simultaneously there is a remarkable success in devotion. And as the Bhagavatam shows that bhakti, yes, bhakti involves renunciation, bhakti involves knowledge, but bhakti is its own tattva. And sometimes even the normally we think as we are becoming more and more renounced, we'll become more and more devoted. But sometimes even the loss of certain level of renunciation can signify a higher level of devotion. And that singular importance of devotion is highlighted by Lord Shiva through his willingness to be orchestrated by Vishnu in this pastime of Mohini Murti, where he becomes temporarily deluded, but still he remains spiritually focused on Krishna and his glories. So I'll summarize. I spoke today on the topic of the twin roles of humility in bhakti. First, so we saw how Lord Shiva has failed in controlling his senses, is captivated by Mohini Murti, but still he is glorifying Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. So the first point I discussed is how bhakti complicates our conceptions of success and failure. Achieving our goal or meeting a particular standard is what we normally consider as success. But in bhakti, we may fail to achieve that goal, but if that brings humility, that's success. We may achieve that goal, but if that makes us arrogant, that will be failure. And of course, we would like to get the external result also, because we are in a missionary movement where we want to contribute in the world, but the focus has to be on the internals and the priority has to be on the internals. Then I talked about when we get some failure, either we can choose humility, that means we reject false ego, or we may end up with humiliation, where false ego is frustrated. So humility can play two roles in bhakti. One is, if we already have bhakti, then humility is the fruit. We focus on Krishna, appreciate his greatness, and naturally feel I am so small in comparison. So humility is the fruit of bhakti. The other way is humility as the route to bhakti. That, oh, I am so small, there's hardly anything I can do, and there's so much I can't do on my own. Krishna, I need you. That thought can make uh, can make us focus on Krishna more, which is the essence of bhakti. So when we lose praise or honor or respect because of something in the external world, that is the opportunity for us to make our devotion more selfless. Because even without this respect and recognition, still I will serve you, Krishna. That is being selfless less for the self? No, because when we are doing a service to Krishna, it's a reciprocation between Krishna and us, irrespective of how the world reciprocates. So the more we give our consciousness to Krishna through a service, the more we give Krishna a place in our consciousness. And the more we are obsessed with the results, and the lesser the place we leave for Krishna in our consciousness. So how does bhakti simplify our focus and purpose? We understand that all that I need to do is simply focus on Krishna and try to serve him. So Lord Shiva was not disturbed because he focused not on his inability to resist temptation, but on the Lord's ability to create a temptation that even he couldn't resist. So similarly, if certain things take our consciousness away from Krishna, then we, by recognizing the potency of those objects, we can become conscious of Krishna even through the things that make us unconscious of Krishna. And I concluded by talking about while we're practicing bhakti, if we just stay focused on trying to serve Krishna in all situations, then we care for the results, but we care more for our consciousness. And through that consciousness, by caring about the consciousness that we are offering, we will always stay on the progressive spiritual path. When Krishna wants, the results may manifest externally, but even if they don't manifest externally, they will manifest internally in terms of our increased attraction to Krishna and absorption in Krishna. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Chaitanya Charan bro, for amazingly bringing about the nuances of this very important topic of success and failure, and how it is so unique in bhakti that what is external could be very different, what is externally seen could be very different internally. So thank you for addressing this topic in such a detailed and amazing way. I have one question from the chat. So the question
Yeah.
is it arrogance if we compare ourselves by seeing ourselves as less in comparison with others?
Okay, so it depends. If we compare ourselves with others and see how we are less than others, is that healthy? See, we live in a world where comparison is almost unavoidable. In the material world, there is competition, and competition is often resolved through comparison. In the spiritual world, in whether it's a classroom, whether it is a job, and even jobs which are supposed to be, say, some job like marketing, there is very obvious comparison, who made how much sales. But even relatively more sattvic jobs, even in teaching, nowadays even teachers and professors, they are rated by students, by peers, by others. And so there will be comparison. So I don't think it's possible at all to avoid all comparison. See, there is comparison and there is a comparing mentality where we are constantly comparing with others. So objectively comparing to know who is good at what service, that is something which is functionally required also. So if we are leading a particular service, then we may want to know is that okay, this person is good at this particular service, and that other person is not so good, or that person is good at that service. So even in a devotional context, we cannot avoid comparing, so that we can find out what is the who can do which service best. So in a sense, Varanashram also involves some amount of comparative observation to know who is in which varna. And even within one varna, even if they're all brahmanas may not be equally learned, all brahmanas may not be equally good in all brahmanical skills. So first point is, we can't avoid comparison. That's simply a fact of life, and it's also a functional need for living. It's not just a passive fact in life which you can be blind to. Okay, it's there, like the sky is there overhead, but it's also a functional need to be aware of in our lives. Having said that, the problem is when we that becomes too much of our focus, when we don't think of anything other than that, and that determines our self host. So self, not self host, self worth. That determines our self worth means we start thinking that, oh, if I am comparing myself with others, if I see that I am less than others, now will that lead to humility? We can say that if I see myself better than others, that can lead to arrogance. But at one level, we can say that arrogance and humility are opposite. But at another level, if we consider superiority, the opposite of a sense of superiority is not humility. The opposite of a sense of superiority is a sense of inferiority. And in a sense, humility takes us beyond the duality of superiority and inferiority. So many times people equate humility with low self-esteem. They equate humility. They sometimes consider that humility can be psychologically damaging, because they feel that if I'm humble, if somebody is humble, that means they don't have that sense of confidence, that they can't take charge of things, they won't be able to do things in life, people will walk over them. So the basic idea is that when, especially in a devotional context, we think of humility, it is based not so much on seeing how others are better than me, because that may not foster humility, that may foster insecurity and inferiority. Because, oh, this devotee is doing so much, this devotee is doing so much, what am I doing? So comparing ourselves with others, what it fosters has to be taken care of. So generally humility comes when our frame of reference is not comparing ourselves with others, it is with Krishna, and I'm a part of Krishna, I am meant to serve Krishna. So that is a healthy approach to humility. So I'd say from a functional perspective, yes, knowing that we are inferior to others in some ways, that's useful. But from a philosophical perspective, or from a psychological perspective or spiritual perspective, whether feeling oneself inferior to others will lead to humility or will lead to insecurity, we'll have to check that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, bro. Like how you're saying, without being either way focused on ourselves, instead like being conscious of our connection with Krishna in either circumstances can be much more spiritually rewarding than just being focused on ourselves.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Darshan, could be open. And here we had like Brahmatirtha Prabhu also, but he had just left. So I was thinking of acknowledging him, but he just left. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you everyone
Thank
for
you so much.
joining. Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.